Welcome to another episode of TimeOut with the SportsDr podcast. And as always, very glad to have you back for another episode and another week. And thank you for continuing to support this podcast. And as always, we have another special guest. Today we have Dr. Jillian Rigert. Not just any doctor, she has her physician's license, MD, and dental license, DMD. So she is dual physician in both dentistry and medicine. So this is going to be a very interesting journey that we're all going to learn about here in real time. So I'm very excited to hear her story and just really to collaborate. So thank you for coming on the podcast. I know you're busy, but thank you for taking the time out to talk to me. Are you interested in real estate? Are you tired of hearing about all the money that your friends and colleagues are making from their investments, but you don't know where to start? Don't worry, I got you. We are teaming up with Dr. Ronnie, Shalev, and Shalwin Properties to equip you with the tools you need to feel empowered about your investments. So how do you get involved? Do these three things. First, go to my website at Dr.Derrick, thesportsdr.com, and click on the sponsor link for Shalwin Properties. This will give you access to a free webinar as well as the ability to have a discovery call with Dr. Ronnie Shalev. Also follow her on social media and stay tuned for more helpful tips coming at you on Money Mondays. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you and everything that you do.
Absolutely. So typically we will talk and kind of discuss things for 5 to 10 minutes before hitting record, but I did not want to ruin this story by doing that. So we're just going to go at it raw and see what it turns out to be. So first, tell us, number one, kind of your path through medicine. Why dentistry? Why medicine? What inspired you to kind of take the path that you took?
Yeah, so I did dentistry because I was really focused on helping people with their quality of life and their mental health. So you'd ask why dentistry. It was more because I thought socially we know people a lot from their face, and it really impacts people to have poor oral health and their self-esteem and their desire to go to levels and interview. And so I thought the best way I could help someone was, one, I was going to do psychology, but it wasn't as accepted in my family as I would have liked. And so I decided to pursue dentistry for similar reasons why I would pursue both. And so I did dentistry, and always kind of felt like it was missing something. I felt like, okay, we're so focused on the mouth. We get medicine, and some dental schools actually have 2 years of medicine as their first 2 years of dental school. And mine, it was pretty robust in medicine. I felt like I did get a good training, but I still felt I was personally missing something. And in dental school, the only specialty that combined both dentistry and medicine was oral surgery. So that was kind of how it all started. And during dental school, we had Air Force officers rotate from different specialties through our school. And I just was enamored. I was like, I need to be part of this. The way that they represented themselves, the courtesy they have, the level of standard they held themselves to. I was put my head down and say, I need to be an Air Force oral surgeon. And I felt very fortunate to be selected in order to continue down that path. And so I joined the Air Force and I started my oral surgery residency, and I picked my head up and I thought, I'm not quite sure this is the right fit for me. So the things I was experiencing at the time were during periods of long hours without sleep, I was actually becoming suicidal. And I felt I was the only one. You hear burnout now, but I didn't. This is 2014.
Yeah.
17 time period, and I did not hear it. So I was just thinking, why am I everyone looked fine around me. Why am I the only one that cannot hold up to what we need to do in order to be successful in surgery? And it was kind of like an existential crisis and an identity concern for me, as I just put in as 28-ish around at the time. And I felt ill, but I didn't know what exactly it was telling me. I do a lot of work now about getting into your body and how your body can tell you if you're in alignment with your true values or not. In oral surgery, that's where in your second and third year of residency, you do medicine. And when I was on my medical rotations, I thrived. I loved it. And I loved psychiatry and mental health. And when I was on surgery, I was not thriving as well. And that was kind of what was highlighting to me, I think you went down a path that maybe isn't the best for you. I was really fortunate for the medical school that I was at. They really allowed me to lean into every single rotation and to feel that out versus just saying, nope, you're on this path. You can't think about anything else. You have to stay on this path. They kind of took me under their wing, especially any attendings that had had career transitions or even thoughts. Maybe, a couple of surgeons did mention to me, oh yeah, when I have long hours on call, I do have dark thoughts, and they've learned how to manage them. So it was the environment that I was at that really helped me to lean into everything and start to see that I needed to make some changes.
So, there's a hierarchy in medicine and dentistry. And what I remember from training, like number one, I always had a high level of respect for oral surgeons because it was hardcore. I mean, like for anyone to go through medical school and dental school, and then many times they would do a GP year to just get into the residency, and they will always be at the hospital. Like in the program where I trained, because the case level load or whatever, it might not be that high, like everybody would go to the OR and no one would leave until they were done. And it was just grueling and kind of a cutthroat environment. So number one, you don't just accidentally get into oral surgery. You have to be a high achiever to even make it to oral surgery. So talk to me about once you achieve that level and when you started to think, okay, this is not for me, was there some what kind of feelings did you have around that?
Yeah, a lot of it was, when we hear imposter syndrome, a lot of it was clouded by my lack of confidence. And I thought I didn't deserve to be there. Even objectively, my dental school was small. It was really great training, but it wasn't one of those academic centers that's highly known because it gets a whole lot of research funding. I researched all in dental school and we were on low resources. And so I had, I was interviewing in surgery with all these people coming from the institutions that are well known. And
Sure.
I thought, well, I think I only got in because I was free. I was sponsored by the Air Force. So the program had all these constructs in my head of I don't deserve here. And because I was playing that over and over in my head, it was constantly making me feel like an outsider, like I don't belong. And no one around me was making me feel that way. Like when I reflect back, they were all very accepting and all very supportive, but I'm inherently a very sensitive, like I definitely absorb people's emotions, and that's not the stereotypical surgeon, but there are great surgeons that are very warm-hearted. And so it was in surgery training with that personality, and I was, a people pleaser, and I really needed external validation to show me that I was doing okay, because my inner dialogue was like, you are horrible, you're inadequate, you're incompetent. And you play that no matter what you're doing over and over again, and then add that you're sleep deprived and add that you're in a high stress, high stakes, high risk environment, because the procedures in dental school are relatively low risk to orthodontic surgeries, or someone coming in, you're doing neck dissections or anything like that. So I think it was just that it was maybe I didn't have enough of a stepping stone between dental school and surgery to prepare, but I also hadn't really leaned in to realize like my self-esteem was real low. My self-compassion was real low. And I say self-compassion because that's something Brene Brown, I have a cup actually, it says, what would Brene Brown do? And she was just here in Houston at a dental conference. And she said, at the core of mental toughness is self-compassion. So people that are very mentally tough, even in the military and surgery, the core trait that they need to have is self-compassion. And I didn't. And part of why we even met is I was taking it out. I was running like crazy. I wasn't eating. I had negative thoughts. So that was certainly not setting myself up for success.
So talk to us about, because you mentioned running. So you were a college athlete, correct?
Yeah.
And what events did you run in college?
I was a D3 athlete and I did the 10K and I ran cross country.
Okay, so long distance, but you eventually went on to run and do marathons, or?
Yep, I did marathons while in college, and then I continued and did some while I was in dental school.
Okay, so were you training as a college athlete and doing marathons just kind of on the side?
Yeah, I did my first and second marathons while I was in college, and my coach helped me train for them. It was a trade-off. He said, I'll
I
help you
see.
train if I ran conference. And it was funny because I ran the Boston Marathon, I think it was like 10 days before conference or something like that. It was prepared. That's why I thought I'd be a great surgeon. I can do
Yeah.
crazy, but it was the best 10K I ever ran. So he saw it wasn't hurting me, and it was helping with my running, helped me with my confidence, and it made me feel strong and capable. And so everyone usually supported the running, but not realizing at what level is it starting to become destructive.
So what I'm going to make up that you were a strong athlete, but as a person, not as confident.
Mhm.
So the athleticism balanced the lack of confidence, just you as a person daily.
Yeah, I think so. I think it really helped to relieve stress and also to just clear the negative energy I had, right? It's like
Sure,
it
sure.
bottled up in all of that negativity. The running really helped to kind of reduce that anxiety and center me.
But did the running lead to health problems for you, or?
Yeah, so I had compulsive, just like anyone would have an addiction to alcohol or other substances. I had a compulsive exercise, so I couldn't go a day without running a whole lot. So I sacrificed sleep to run, and eventually my heart was in the 20s, like my heart rate was too low, my weight
Wow.
was too low, and because I also have an eating disorder. I've lived with anorexia and lack of control and surgery. Anorexia sometimes creeps in when you need more control. And so on top of the sleep deprivation, that kicked up to cope with the inadequacy. So that also fed into why running became so unhealthy for me.
Got it. So now you mentioned that we're in this training program. You're about to step away from oral surgery, and you decided to go to medical school and concentrate on medical school at that point?
So I was in medical school as part of oral surgery.
Right.
So I graduated medicine, and then we talked a little bit before everyone could hear us that when are we going to learn about stopping
Yeah.
work? I want to share this because this is something that when people come to me to help support their career transitions or burnout recovery, I was not yet willing to face the grief and the guilt and the shame of leaving a residency. And I had just been medically discharged from the military, which was a huge identity loss. And I was very passionate about the military. I loved the military. And if I would have let go of surgery sooner, I potentially could have been healthy enough to stay in the military. So I was beating myself up for all these things. And I had lost my ex-boyfriend, passed away, and some other people close to me passed away. And there was so much grief, and I didn't want to face I wasn't ready to face any of that. I signed over my residency resignation letter, and the next day I'm starting my other residency. My second residency was oral medicine. And not a lot of people know what oral medicine is. And it's a specialty of dentistry. And there's a lot of rotations that we go on, medical rotations. So it felt like a perfect fit. And at the time, I didn't even know oral medicine was a residency, and it hadn't yet been identified as a ADA accredited specialty in dentistry.
All right. So after you finished that, did you go on to clinical practice, or what was your career path like?
The Sabre training bat is like no other training bat you've ever used before. So the purpose of the Sabre training bat with its modified barrel is so that you can perfectly sequence and get behind the ball, getting the bat on plane sooner, creating less miss hits, more line drives, higher batting averages, and more exit velocity. The Sabre training bat is the #1 training bat on the market. Sabre Bats, the training bat that's going to take you to your best swing.
Yeah, so I graduated in 2019, and I was actually an attending at a hospital when COVID hit, and I was in hospital-based dentistry. So COVID and really sick patients in dentistry were not a great combination.
Sure.
But it it gave me that pause, and we removed ourselves from clinic, and I stayed out of clinic more because at that time my immune system, like my white blood cell count was 1.63. It was from all the stress and whatnot. So staying outside of the clinic gave me that perspective of, okay, what do you really want to do now? And what haven't you done? Process grief, face the shame and guilt of leaving surgery, and what that meant about me as a person. Because not only do those negative thoughts in surgery rear their heads, but after leaving, then you're a quitter, and as we know from sports, it's really hard to take that and not make it mean
a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're in 2020 now, and now you're saying, okay, dentistry shut down, hospitals shut down. I have time to deal with myself. Oh, at the same time, the whole world is in turmoil. A pandemic's starting. So how did you manage? The world is crazy and everything is shutting down. And now I'm going to go inside and kind of deal with all the things that I've been putting off for years. How were you able to process all of that?
Yeah, I was in a combination of therapy, and that wasn't enough. Like I had a lot of the trauma. A lot of people during medical training and with COVID will have like a lot of trauma. And I numbed that again with I was overrunning, and I was at that point had a really negative relationship with running. I was just running and running and running. It's the only thing I could control was how much I was running. So I barely ever stopped. And I was tired, and I was just sick of being sick, because if people have experiences with eating disorders, or, even if it's diet and you're just constantly just uncomfortable in your own skin, and using that as a way to control something, it becomes exhausting. And so I thought, I hit a rock bottom with that. And I thought, I'm either going to die or I'm going to make massive changes in my life. And I chose the latter. And I had a condo at the time. I sold it, and I sold most everything in it. This puppy is on this photo that is next to me. It was my saving grace. He's been with me through all these experiences in oral medicine and beyond that. So I just kept him and really focused, okay, what's really important in my life? And being remote helped me to realize that maybe that chaotic setting isn't the best fit for me, with being so sensitive. Maybe I need something slower. I was really good at data analysis and numbers. And so I thought research has always been something I've really enjoyed. And I reached out to my oral medicine community. I said, I don't think I'm the best fit for me. I think I need to move on. And they gave my chair, gave me an email from a radiation oncologist. And it was an email of a photo of a tweet. So this is funny because I never would have planned it. I was actually interviewing. So I knew I was about to go into a period of joblessness, not because I was fired, so I wasn't eligible for any support. And so I ended my contract, and I was looking at all sorts of jobs, and none of them were feeling right. I just felt like I was grabbing at something to have an income and to just feel stable, even if it wasn't enough to actually be stable financially. But my former chair from oral medicine gave me that email with the tweet. And I didn't have a Twitter account, but I got one so that I could tweet this person who had tweeted about their interest in adding an earlier career dental specialist to their team. And so I tweeted him right away, and we interviewed, I think it was the next night, and he is currently my boss. So I moved across country. I work in radiation oncology, and it's been a lot better fit. So I didn't mention that throughout my training, in medical school, I found that my niche, I love to be able to hold space for cancer patients. And I think part of that's from my anorexia journey, is that when people don't know and it's complex and they're afraid, they often leave. And that was the loneliness was so painful and so depressing. And having the loneliness and the depression feed into a disease, it can lower the prognosis, is what, I understand from reading the literature. And without hope for my own fight, it's easy to give up. So in order to have a boundary, I didn't want to work with patients with eating disorders, but I resonated with this similar experience with people with cancer enough that I could learn how to hold space for them. So in medical school, that's what stuck. In oral medicine, we're actually part of the dental specialists that are trained most with patients being treated for cancer. And again, during that residency, that was the niche that really I felt I could add the most value. So then when this opportunity came, I work at a cancer institution. And it just felt like it was really in alignment with what I was seeking without even knowing what was going to be available.
So one thing, as you're talking, I've mentioned before on my podcast that I have the belief that no steps are wasted, whether they're failure, success, ups, downs, happiness, sadness, it all comes together to make us a unique individual. And it sounds like, adversity. I mean, you've overcome mental illness and physical illness and loss and, so many things, but you have not let it destroy you, number one. And now it seems like you're able to put all those pieces together into one beautiful mosaic to be able to help other people. So is that where you kind of decided I'm going into coaching, or talk to us about that?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, when I was at that point of, do I give up on life or do I do something drastically different? I was had just been invited into a women physicians Facebook group, and they were talking about how coaching was really helping with burnout. And I was like, I had not yet found anything that was helping. And I felt almost desperate for something different than what I've tried before. So I looked at a few programs and just it wasn't feeling the right fit. And then someone posted about Martha Beck, and she has a program called the Wayfinder Life Coach Program. And I just kept landing on her website. And I was like, there's something special about this person. And her story is she has kind of leaned against what she grew up in, and she's had a path that was non-traditional. And I just resonated so much. And she actually talks about how when you're in a path that's out of alignment with your integrity or with your true values, then you feel it have a negative somatic experience, like you get sick. And she has chronic illness and it affects your mental health. And it's what she said resonated. So I started her program. And when I joined the program, it was for my own healing, as well as learn how to hold space for people. And I had no expectations for what I was getting into. But through joining, when I got to my new institution and there was a burnout committee, I sat in on it. And after, the chair said, if you have any questions, message me. And I said, is there an opportunity to bring coaching to our department? And he said, actually, it's already within our institution. He gave me the contact for a person in charge of the coach training in the institution, and there was an open seat. So it was very serendipitous for the cohort that started a couple months later, which is, it's nuts to think about now, because now the openings are much later if you were to ask if you're interested. So I got the opportunity to do coach training through my institution and became a coach, and just saw how much it helped me. And then, as you said, no, nothing's wasted. So how can I take my experiences with anorexia, and I see what we do in medicine, and it's not taught well about eating disorders, but also just BMI and weight biases and how we communicate with people. It really needs to be changed if we're going to help people. And so I can use that voice, even if they don't have technically an eating disorder, diagnosed eating disorder, can have a shared experience and sensitivity for people that come in. And so with all those experiences, I try to help the medical community hear that story and at least shake it up a little bit through blogging on Kevin MD's website. So whatever I'm like, I don't know exactly where I need to say this. It needs my own doctor. After I moved to Houston, I've become a lot healthier. So there's a big difference of my weight from where I was before I moved to Houston and now. And she doesn't know how much I weigh, but she knows the difference. And so she counseled me. She knows all my diagnosis. I mean, I was discharged with the eating disorder from the military. And so she can see all my diagnosis, but she still counseled me on my weight over telephone. And I'm like, wait a second. Wait a second. Like,
yeah,
completely inappropriate. The weight change was needed. And but it gave me a glimpse of what people are facing, and it's unacceptable.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because people will look at a number and they don't know where you started or where you have, where you're going. No, that was very eye-opening when you said that. And that definitely makes me think about, when I have these discussions with people. So thank you for sharing that. And number one, thank you for sharing, just being so open and being so brave to share your story, because this is how you connect with people and how you can save somebody else, because literally we go through things each day and we feel so isolated because, when the pressure is on you, it seems like you're alone many times. And to be able to know that someone like you has been through so much and still being able to achieve at such a high level is very inspirational for me, and it will be for many people who hear this story. So just thank you for being so open.
Yeah, and I'll have to say, when I was a resident, when I thought I was alone, and I mentioned I had suicidal ideation, there was one surgeon that told me, pulled me aside and had a deep discussion with me about her experiences. That discussion had me pause enough to be like, I'm not alone. And that's why I share, because I'm like, if people hear they're not alone, it at least gives them that, okay, I can take a step back and say, what do I need to heal? It's not just me. Because in my head for 3 years, I was like, why can I not do this? And for the first time, I felt, I'm a complete failure, like failure in my life. And I was not focusing on anything that went positive.
Yeah. All right. So on TimeOut with the Sports Doctor, this is your final TimeOut. So I want you to speak to the individual, because people are going to be hearing this at the beginning of the year. So many times at the beginning of the year, there's a lot of pressure. I'm about to change everything, right? I'm going to make these resolutions. I'm going to get on a diet. I'm going to get on whatever. I'm going to change, just completely change. Please speak to that person who's feeling pressure to change, but feels stuck and is down. Just giving them some tools to work with or where to start.
Yeah, the first thing I do is know your why. Because a lot of us want to do these things, but we do it for external pressures or the belief that it will drastically improve our life in some way, but it's filling a void that maybe you're not at the root cause or root core of what that void is. So, with the eating disorder, I could lose weight all the time, but really I was looking for something to numb and something to feel better, because what I really needed was self-compassion. And I think taking away Brene Brown's at the core of mental toughness is self-compassion. Because if we can at least offer people that self-compassion is not fluffy, it's not something that should be overlooked and something that, is seen as a soft skill. It's something that's absolutely necessary. And the one thing you said, make drastic changes. In Martha Beck's program, we never make everything big at one time. It's always turtle steps. So you can have a vision of what you want. And of course, I would make sure that vision is in alignment with your core values and with a why that's internal to you, not why because so-and-so is making me feel that I should do this to be a person with worth. You're already worthy. Right. So have a vision, and then always make sure it's in alignment, because we can all set these audacious goals, and if they're not in alignment, they won't, you'll get to the top and it can feel very empty. And then make small turtle steps way forward so that you can always allow yourself permission to pivot as needed.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Now, you mentioned Brene Brown a couple of times. What's your favorite book from her?
Gosh. I love all of her books. Atlas of the Heart just came out, so that's one that comes to mind, but Daring Greatly was great. And she's got a podcast that everyone can look up as well if they don't have time to dive into her books.
Great. So tell everyone about the work that you're doing and how they can follow along with your journey.
Yeah, I think in alignment with our discussion is I do have a YouTube channel as well, and it's all about other people's journeys so that they can really feel not alone. And that's kind of my baby right now, is to provide a community that people know and they can see themselves in other people, and then they have ways to contact them. Since we're all on very different journeys, all the people that come onto the podcast, just like your wonderful work that you're doing, if you feel yourself or see yourself in a glimpse of what someone else has experienced, then you can lean into connecting further with them. So that's where I'd go. And my YouTube channel is just my name with my credentials at the end of it.
Perfect. Well, thank you once again for sharing your story. And if we can ever be add value to what you're doing, just let me know. But thank you for sharing with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Of course, we'll have to get you on my platform to hear more about your story as well.
Absolutely. I'll be glad to do it.
Thank you for continuing to support this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then please leave a 5-star review. And if you haven't done so, subscribe so you continue to get the updated episodes. Until later, peace. Time out with the sports doctor. Keep our head right in the game. We ain't never stopping. You are now tuned in. Trust you don't want to miss. This is where life, sports, and medicine